Welcome to Storytimer. Susan Beth Haab. 18-year-old Susan Haab was almost home. She had worked that day as an office assistant placed by a temp agency. She was back in Indianapolis on Thanksgiving and term break from Ball State University and was trying to earn a little extra money. It was Tuesday, December 3rd, 1968, and she was scheduled to work again the next day as well. She had gone out that evening with a friend and was returning home just after midnight. She was driving southbound at 12:20 a.m. on Kessler Boulevard North Drive and was only a quarter of a mile away from her parents' home. She had dressed very smartly and casually in preppy brown Bermuda shorts, long white socks, a white blouse, and brown shoes. It was a normal drive home until something unexpected happened on her street. No one saw how the incident began, but several neighbors saw the aftermath. Susan's car was parked with the lights on and the door open. Her purse and jacket were left inside. Susan had run across the street and frantically knocked on the door of 3551 Kessler Boulevard Drive North. She was running from an assailant who was shooting at her. On this quiet street, with its large lawns and ranch-style homes, Susan was running for her life. After knocking and realizing that the door wouldn't be opened quickly enough, she turned north and attempted to run to the next house. She would be struck by 3 bullets, and she fell on the lawn. A young man with a light-colored car was seen fleeing the scene. 2 witnesses said that he walked to his car, which was parked in front of Susan's. He didn't run, he walked. He was described as tall, young, a white person in light-colored clothing. The house that she had knocked on belonged to a retired police officer. His wife was home and heard the knock and 1 gunshot. Other witnesses said that they heard 3 gunshots. Susan's death certificate lists gunshot wounds to the head, neck, and thorax as the cause of death. Numerous newspaper articles mention a 4th wound to the left lower leg. She was still breathing when first responders arrived, but died shortly after. One theory was that the first bullet struck her in the leg and took her down, and that the others were fired at a closer point-blank range. Her friends and relatives were questioned. Young men that she had known at high school were questioned. Some were given lie detector tests. Men arrested for other crimes were questioned, and their alibis were checked out. No one was ever charged. Police came to believe that this was the work of a stranger. Her father, Charles Haab, said, "I believe that this was someone she knew, or someone playing at policeman." It was theorized that Susan had pulled over or been forced to pull over in some way. The assailant's car was parked in front of hers. Perhaps he passed her and flashed a badge and then slowed to a stop in front of her. Perhaps he asserted some other type of authority. Reverend Wayne Rayner Meyer, 26, had been Susan's youth pastor at 7th Christian Church. He said he had known her since she was in the 9th grade. In an article in the days following her murder, he mentions that the 2 of them wrote letters while she was away at Ball State. Did he write to all of his youthful congregation? In the article, he says this of Susan: "She was a very honest person and a very sensitive person. She liked to laugh, not just with her face, but with her whole body. She seemed the least likely to have this happen to her. It was out of character for her." He said, when he had first met her, that she was sort of the wallflower type, but that he had seen her change and gain confidence and poise. He said that she was in her happiest time of life. He said she wanted to date and be popular, and that it seemed that she was pursuing that. He put forth the theory that this was someone she knew. He didn't think she would stop for a stranger. He showed one of her letters to the reporter. Shortly after her murder, Reverend Meyer left Indiana and took a job as a pastor in Pleasanton, Kansas. In June of 1969, he married Linda Lee Adams. She was the same age as Susan. She also attended Ball State. How did they meet? Was she a friend of Susan's from Ball State? Their wedding announcement is in the Muncie paper, where she was from, but not in the Indianapolis paper, where he had been living and ministering to his flock. She transferred to Kansas State University and finished her degree in elementary education in 1970. And then I can't find any more record of them. I can't find any newspaper articles. No paper, no paper trail at all. I assume she worked as a teacher. I assume that they maybe had children, but there are no birth certificates, no divorce information, no death certificates. It's very unusual and very odd. I can't find anything at all of Linda Lee Meyer after 1970 when her graduation announcement was placed in the Muncie paper, likely by her mother. But perhaps they're just very humble and private people. Another suspect in Susan Haab's murder would come to the public's attention in 1973. Raymond Charles Lamb would be charged and convicted in the 1973 murder of Catherine Kitty Kaufman. He was also identified by a shooting victim who survived her attack. Connie Weaver was shot by Raymond Charles Lamb just days before Catherine Kaufman's murder. Lamb was suspected in the murder of Carol Ann Rhodes in 1972 and of the 1970 murder of Constance May Thomas. We'll discuss those attacks and Raymond Charles Lamb in future posts. Susan Beth Haab would be 74 today if she was still alive. She might have had a long career, traveled, had a family, and made a positive impact on her community. She was so driven and so bright. She had graduated high school in only 3.5 years and started college at 17. She was a sophomore at Ball State and a standout student when she was killed. She had a younger brother named Mark. He was only 15 when she was murdered. Her parents, Charles E. and Beverly J. Haab, lived just 1 minute away from the site of their daughter's murder. One can only imagine how this tragedy impacted all their lives. It was just after Thanksgiving and just before Christmas. I imagine that they never had another truly joyful and carefree holiday. Their former home came up on Zillow as I was researching this case. It's not for sale, but it sits empty. The yard is overgrown in the photos. The interior looks unchanged since 1968. The house looks long abandoned. The photos tell a tale of unimaginable loss and a deep grief that was never eased. Rest in peace, Susan Beth Haab.